Hello and welcome to Autosport's Top 50 Drivers of 2024. I'm Kevin Turner. I'm joined in the studio today by Gary Watkins and Haydn Cobb to run through the drivers who made the list. And in this episode, we're going to look at the drivers from 40th place to 31st. Right then, chaps, let's get straight on into it as we talked about in a previous episode, the drivers that just missed out. So 40, a driver that probably a lot of people won't have heard of. Maybe that's a bit unfair. If you're a real enthusiast, you might know already. But Tadasuke Makino, second in Super GT, third in Super Formula.
Well, the reason the sort of casual motorsport fan wouldn't have heard of him because he'd never won a Super Formula race before.
Well,
and he's now won a Super Formula race, become a championship contender, and that's why he's on the list.
But also, Gary, we should probably point out that the Japanese domestic scene is incredibly competitive and hard, isn't it? It's a very high level.
I mean, I only see what European races that have gone over there in recent years, and how they've done or not done, and it sort of shows you the level.
Yeah, I mean, and also, to be in the top three of the two championships there is going to give you a good chance of getting up the list. That he's not the last Japanese representative in our top 50 by some margin. So yes, we wanted to, again, it's another example of trying to spread the joy a bit. And the Super Formula cars are like, if you can go from F2 to Super Formula, it's that sort of level.
Yeah. I mean, you had that sort of from back end of last year, the swap of Miata coming over to F2 and Porsche briefly going to Super Formula, and they had obviously their trials and tribulations of each. But yeah, you're right. And in terms of going back to the gradings of, let's call the FIA or our own gradings, Super Formula is incredibly high level. So therefore, as a result, he gets a lot of points from that.
Yeah, absolutely.
Imaginary points.
Imaginary points.
Yeah, I tally it up.
Yeah, we don't actually do this scoring.
Please don't write in asking for our point system.
Oh my God! Yeah. I mean, I have written an article actually that will go alongside the top 50, explaining how we put the list together, and we did talk about that in the first video as well, from 50 to 41. So if you're still wondering how we've got to the list that we've got to, take a look at one of those, please. Right, so we'll crack on. Number 39, Alex Albon. He's dropped quite a few places from...
Should he have dropped more?
Well, should he? Or are we being a little bit biased because Franco Colapinto came in and did such a good job for a couple of races, and we all went, oh, maybe Albon hasn't been doing such a good job, but then Colapinto threw it at the wall a few times and went,
certainly not his best year. That's a fair reflection, first off. And it seems that car was not straightforward. Obviously, it was big and bulbous and heavy at the start and lost weight, but then they kept Albon and his teammates over the year kept throwing it in the wall, and then they kept losing parts, and therefore process upgrades, everything was slowed down. So I think, given a tricky car for different reasons to handle, he didn't probably have too many starring performances enough, but I would say this is probably where he should be in the list.
I mean, it was difficult to grade him, wasn't it? Because the first part of the season was with Logan Sargent, and we
didn't have a representative.
Not really an F1 level driver, let's be honest.
Yeah.
And then Colapinto's a rookie.
Exactly. So that's why I'm questioning.
Well, what will be interesting, with hindsight, in 12 months' time, we'll know whether we got this right, won't we? Because if Carlos Sainz comes in and absolutely blows his doors off, we'll go, okay. But if Albon compares quite well to an established front-running Grand Prix winner, then you go, okay, he was doing a good job.
Well, it might be his last time in the top 50, I might suggest.
Ooh. Oh, that's one of those things we've got to come back to.
Will
it be his last time
make a note of that. And we'll
beat me with that.
Well, he might end up in your world as well, like 5 years' time, and then get back in again, because we do see drivers kind of coming out sometimes with big gaps between, actually.
Yeah. And you said that in the previous edition of this, the sliding doors moments with Roland, and obviously he was destined for a Formula E berth before things changed massively at the Red Bull situation, and if he doesn't end up
the early days of the second Red Bull seat saga, which continues to this day.
I actually think he'll end up in BTCC like his father.
Nigel Albon in the Renault 19.
Exactly.
Oh my God,
that would be something.
Terrible vehicle that Well, that was not a car I was expecting to come up on this podcast. Right, well, let's go on to number 38, which is Kelvin van der Linde. And he had a little bit of a Fernando Alonso about him this year, wasn't he? He was very good at bigging himself up. What an amazing job he was doing in an ancient Audi. I know Audi are pulling out Gary, but it wasn't that bad. I mean, the R8 has been one of arguably the greatest GT3 car, isn't it?
His arguments are totally spurious because it's a BOP formula.
Well,
Yeah, it's true.
So I'm sorry, old car, that's rubbish.
shot down in flame.
Yeah.
But
And it did have an Evo, its second Evo, only a couple of years ago. Sure, there are newer cars on the grid, but again, back to the BOP point.
But on the positive side, second in the DTM, consistent season up there. Did get some.
And I'm a big fan of his. I'm not trying to diss him as a driver. I just think his that point is unfounded.
Yeah, fair enough. But Haydn, I mean, DTM, obviously it's not the cool Class 1 cars that we...
Not anymore, yeah.
But by having GT3, you have effectively, in a way, got more potential winners, haven't you, because of the BOP. So
exactly.
finishing in the top 3 in the championship is still something to...
Yeah, there's that more
shout about.
randomness of certain elements to it. And yeah, a solid season. I wouldn't say it was spectacular, but that probably explains where he's fallen in the list.
Oh, that describes the next person on the list very well. 37th is Fernando Alonso, 9th in the Formula 1 Championship, who now grading.
Where was he last year again?
Oh, he was really high.
Much higher because obviously they're a much better car and he was pushing in those podiums at the start of the year.
I also wonder whether he's in a similar place to Lewis Hamilton, that when they get a sniff,
then he turns on.
It's muscle memory.
Now, I've actually in my notes here said that I don't believe that's the case with Alonso. Because I reckon he extracts 100% or 99.999% whatever he's driving, whether it's a championship winner, a car that's got a sniff of a podium, or a dog.
Now, up until this season, I would absolutely agree with you, and that's why Alonso, to me, is in the top 10 to 12 greatest of all time. Mm-hmm. But this year, they were, especially in the middle of the season,
really drifted. But
Lance Stroll got way too close to him.
That is my other point. That Stroll was too close to him this year.
In the middle, he was well ahead at the beginning, and actually towards the end, he was putting in the good performances again. There was that middle bit where it was like he looked a little bit disinterested, maybe. I don't know. Yeah, I think he was getting frustrated with the lack of development, wasn't he?
That's it. There was just a lack of everything going on, and a little bit like Albon. And I'm not making this a Lance Stroll punch down, but that whole teammate comparison, comparing Alonso to Stroll, is a risky business, let's say, in terms of where the level is. And so where that car was, you're right, I think Stroll probably got a bit too far, but let's say when they had a better car in this early 23, or when they maybe, let's say, they have a very good car in the future.
Can I flick the argument on its head and say Stroll has got the bigger peaks and troughs, so maybe in the summer Stroll having the peak,
and then the troughs.
That's not a bad shout, is it? Because we do know, as much as he is maligned a lot, and we've probably seen enough of him in Formula 1, let's be honest, but he does have high peaks, doesn't he?
And we don't understand, that we don't really understand.
Well, I think it's probably because he's not, from what I understand, he's not on it work ethic wise all the time. Mm-hmm. He's a kind of a fair weather, or ironically when it rains. If all is well and he's in the mood, then he's good. But he's not the sort of person that's going to be with the data engineers until midnight working out how to find another 10th, which is one of the differences between a very good driver and a great one, isn't it? Exactly. So okay. Well, we'll press on. So we're going to come to one of those GT3 drivers that's done what Gary has talked about before, which is win in different places. It's Mauro Engel at 36. Now I'm just going to lose my notes here because he was GT World Challenge Europe Sprint Cup champion. He did win the GT World Cup in Macau after some hilarious racing ahead of him. And he was third in the DTM as well. So, I mean, a top performer in GT3. I would argue that GT3 is the most competitive category as opposed to championship in the world.
Yes,
in terms of the number of professional drivers there are. So if you're
and the number of manufacturers who are up there competing.
I think if you're outstanding in GT3, you should be in this list.
And he has been one of the outstanding performers in GT3 for 10 years. And he's won everything. We know he's won a load of Macaus. He's won, most of the other big races and championships. But I actually asked him at the beginning of the year, what do you want to win this year? What are your ambitions? And he actually, this was before the first round of the GT World Challenge Europe Sprint Cup at Brands Hatch. We did a little piece on it because it was the British round, and he said, I actually want to win the Sprint Cup. because I've never won that. And he said, that's a box I want to tick. He ticked the box this year. And he mentioned one other thing that he wanted to do in 2024, and that was get in the Autosport top 50 at the end of the year. And I said, Murrow, surely you've been in it. He goes, no. I said, really? Yeah, I've never been in it, but I'd really like to be in it. And now he's in it. So
Can I just
well done, man.
Yeah, absolutely, well done. And we're sorry you haven't been in it before as well. But I didn't know that. We didn't know that, did we, when we were putting the list together? So that's actually really nice. Nice little story. Yeah, it's interesting that often it's the GT3 drivers that do get in touch or that are interested in it, because I think maybe it's one of their rare opportunities to get a bit of profile, a bit of recognition, because it's very easy to get lost in GT3, isn't it? Because there are so many championships, multiple drivers, Obviously, the teams and people in it know who are good, but for the wider world, you can easily miss things. So, I'm glad that we've ticked that box. You have to ask him what his box tick, what his plan is for 2025.
Climb the list.
Climb the list.
Higher.
That'd be an amazing
top 10. Have we ever had a GT3 driver in the top 10? I would suggest
so.
No.
That's
but
interesting.
But he's still got a way to go. 36th which is great.
Maybe
carry on going,
because at the end of next year, GT3 would have had 20 seasons, won't it?
Yes.
So Gary, you might have to.
So I'm going to have
top
to do
10 GT3 drivers of the first 2 decades.
Yeah, or because there've been so many, I'm going to have to do a top 200 maybe.
Well, as it's 75 years of Autosport, maybe you could do
a top 75.
Top 75.
Yeah. Okay.
Nice, full grid.
Oh my God. Better get started now.
Yeah.
All right, number 35, another driver in Gary's world, Matt Campbell. Now,
who also impressed in GT3 cars, but of course we're really going to be talking about him for WEC and IMSA here.
Yeah, because he won the Bathurst 12 hour, didn't he?
Yes.
But he was 5th in the World Endurance Championship in the hypercar class, didn't have a win, did win the Daytona 24 hours. But
going back to our point about
and he was the
Felipe and Macho.
Yeah, he was one of the key drivers in that.
Yeah.
But also, if I'm right in saying, Gary, he was the outstanding driver in the number 5 Porsche.
Exactly, he was the standout driver. Put it on pole at Qatar first time out, another pole later in the year at Spa, was always a quick and consistent performer. Didn't get the win that arguably they deserved. He was with Michael Christensen and Frederick Machiavecchi. Couple of things. Christensen had a mistake at Spa. There was a tyre issue with Christensen driving at Qatar when perhaps they might have challenged the championship-winning car for the victory there. And then he was rudely assaulted by Kamui Kobayashi at Fuji.
Quite unlike Kobayashi, really, to do an error like that, don't you think?
Well, yeah, absolutely. Yeah, it was a red mist moment, wasn't it? Yeah. So, he was probably unlucky not to come away with a victory, but he was outstanding at Daytona. And IMSA is very much his first love, I think, as far as racing sports cars go. And he'll be back there next year. There's been a bit of a reshuffle at the Porsche Penske Motorsport squad across WEC and IMSA. So he's back in IMSA, and we'll be seeing him for a few WEC races as well, Le Mans included.
That's good. That's good. But we're going to stay in America, but a very different type of American motor. I'm going to throw this completely at you, Hayden, because I've long since given up trying to work out how to rate NASCAR drivers. Because do you rate them on, because they have this ridiculous, the rest of the championship is.
Can we not call it a championship, please?
Because
it's not a championship.
The NASCAR
It
Cup
is a
Series.
And it is a cup for a reason.
Yes, it is
you
a
could
cup.
say.
Well, except it was called a cup when it was a championship back 20 years ago. But obviously, I would argue that since they introduced the chase in 2004 or whatever
it was,
that it's not a championship, particularly when the qualifying criteria became race wins and not points.
That's
which is
but then
07 or something.
If you can get in through the points if
there's not enough winners.
If there are
the regular
season. Anyway, so
we could have a 4-hour-long podcast to explain the playoff rules.
Yeah, with breaks for hot dogs and beer in between. But we won't do that. But what I will say is that the people at the front of NASCAR, very high level for what they do. It's very professional championship, top of its sort of branch of motorsport, and in at 34 is Ryan Blaney. So Haydn, remind me, why did we put Ryan Blaney at 34?
Well, it's true. It's difficult to judge them, and that's why the whole thing, performance is key, because results, you can just pinch a regular season win, drift away a little bit, but win at the right time, and that's what Blaney was doing. You were just picking up those wins at the right time.
It's a theme that will come up again in this list later, I think.
Yes, yeah, and so that's probably why he's not as high as some others that we'll get onto, but certainly, he's within that level and that category of the top guys in that category, but it makes them very difficult to judge between championships in particular.
It is, but joking aside, we do need to have NASCAR drivers in there because of the high level. And let's face it, they do an awful lot of racing as well, and some of them do stuff beyond just the.
Well,
exactly.
Some of them are out
the
on Wednesday nights in in midgets or.
Yeah, and some of them do the odd Xfinity race and all sorts of stuff. So
they'll race anything. It's great.
Yeah, and I think it's also fair to say, whereas 20, 25 years ago, they would get embarrassed, the regulars got embarrassed on a traditional road course. That doesn't really happen so much these days, does it? They're more complete drives now. So, right. Well, let's move on to 33, a completely different realm. I like Mirko Bortolotti. I'm really pleased that he's got a DTM championship. James Newbold talked to him for our piece on the recent piece, Farewell to the Old MS VF2 car. What a lovely, enthusiastic chap he is. And he's been knocking on the door for a while, hasn't he? He's one of the top GT3 drivers, but seemed to not quite get a chance. But he's won the DTM in a Lamborghini, and it was a campaign of consistency. Really,
I was about to say, consistency was key for that one, massively.
And as you say, he's been a top GT3 driver for a long time, and I think he deserves his place here. And also he had he was doing other stuff, not including driving the LMDH Lamborghini in WEC, which obviously was a bit of a struggle, but he did some IMSA races. I think he had a class win at Petite, so that's
right.
A significant result. So I think we can say he had a good season. DTM plus.
Yeah, he's one of those drivers that's always good every year, but this year is the way he's got the reward. So that's why we sort of rewarded him by getting on this list.
Do we think? It's interesting, the DTM, isn't it? It's when we're assessing GT3 drivers. If you look here, we've got more DTM drivers than GT3 drivers, if you like. And obviously, because it's one driver,
I was just going to say, it's easier to see.
And obviously, it's the DTM, which historically is an important series, not as important as the organisers think it is. Different organisers over the years.
Oh, that's another one ticked off the list of people to upset. Who's left?
I'm banned from every paddock in Europe next year.
On to America.
But I think perhaps we have given the DTM a little bit of undue weight here.
Yeah, maybe that's fair. That's something.
That's not to diss any of the drivers on the list.
I think it's fair to say that the ones that have made the list, they've certainly starred and sparkled, but I think as a weighting and as that series over the years has changed.
Because have they been any better than the top half dozen drivers in the GT World Challenge Europe Endurance Cup that are just so much more difficult, or fewer races, of course, as well, unless they're doing dual programs. So it is, as we said before, GT3 is really difficult, but it's nice to pick out some representatives.
Well, it's easier to make a name for yourself if it's just you in the car, and it's more in the face for us. So
actually, what we want is I want a WEC sprint non-championship round.
Oh, brilliant! Yeah. Well, don't forget.
Or like Norris Ring.
Yes. Well, don't forget that a few years ago, to increase the visibility of GTE and GTE Pro in particular, they were talking about having sprint races. And at this point, I raised the idea of Norris Ring, which, of course, back in Group C World Championship era, was around of the World Championship. And I said, well, we should have a GTE Pro sprint race at the Norris Ring. Unfortunately, the sort of, WEC went into a bit of a turmoil after Audi's withdrawal, then Porsche's withdrawal from LMP1. Then we went into the super season, so the sort of plan fell by the wayside, and obviously we don't have GTE Pro anymore. So yeah, that plan didn't work. But I like the idea.
Let's do it at Silverstone as well, selfishly, to bring big sports cars back. I mean, I know the LMS are coming, obviously, but let's try and get a few more back anyway.
Yeah.
Right, well, 32, Gabriele Bortoleto, F2 champion, getting into F1. He was always going to be on the list, wasn't he?
Rookie,
did the off the back of an F3 champion, which has been done by the, I don't want to say proper drivers, but the big star. Is that fair?
I think
the
that's
star
fair.
drivers tend to go F3, bang, won the championship, F2, bang.
New car
as well. Which I think probably
levels of playing
I think
but
the days, he's not a 4-year F2 champion. We've seen those in the past, haven't we? And I think the new car probably helped him. Not
certainly.
To take anything away.
But
leveled the playing field against those more experienced drivers, but still put in some phenomenal drives. Went last to first with a little bit of help of a crash to win, and did the business when he needed to, and is highly rated by many people. Alonso's obviously in his corner too. Let's see how he goes. But if he's following the footsteps of Leclerc and Russell and Piastri as back-to-back F3, F2 champions, that's a good pathway to follow. And if he can follow that, then his place here is justified, and he'll only be climbing higher on the list.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it's actually another good example of where you can kind of say, when we're grading it, as to how strong the performance is in the context of their championship and their experience. So he's not quite as high as Oscar Piastri was when he won the F2 championship, but I think that's justified in that he kind of had a cross between the Hadjar and Bortoleto seasons. That he won the most feature races, he had the most poles, he was also consistent, he won by quite a margin, and everyone went, this guy is F1 ready, whereas Bortoleto hasn't been quite as emphatic, but he has still done a great job, so he's on the list. So I think that's kind of where we try and slot them in. Right, well, let's finish this this rundown of 40 to 31 with 31st, which is someone in the World Road Championship who I think is okay to have had a part-time season, because he's won 8 world championships and he's
allowed to.
He's old enough to allow part-time season. We'll get to someone else later on who I think I would not have that for. Fourth in WRC, Sebastian Ogier, won more rallies than the champion. Three wins for Toyota.
Early autumn was in a title fight as a part-time driver, which was strange.
Goes back to our weird WRC narrative of 2024.
But he's class, isn't he? A class performer, proved it time and time again. I sort of in a strange twist of that situation, almost when the title talk did start happening, and he was then called up by Toyota to do basically nearly a full program. That's when things started to go a little bit wrong, but then he still delivered when it mattered to get the manufacturers.
Well, I was going to say he kind of dropped down a little bit because he had some shunts that knocked him out, but then on the very last stage of the season to pull it out of the bag when he needed to get Toyota over a little bit the rallying equivalent of Sebastian Buemi's finale drive to
both
Toyota nicking a manufacturer's championship against the odds in a finale.
I mean, I know, he can do what he wants because he's a legend, isn't he, of rallying. But I wish he'd make up his mind what he wants to do. He pitches up in my world in sports car racing. He talks about wanting to move up to high. He raced LMP2 at Le Mans. Talks about wanting to be in a hypercar at Le Mans with Toyota, tests one, does a bit of simulator work, but then he basically wasn't interested in his LMP2 campaign. He they had a bit of a mare at the first race at Sebring, so the team opted to do some testing, but he didn't show up because he was on holiday. I mean, do you want to do this or do you not want to do this? Make up your mind, mate.
There you go.
Blimey, there we go.
Yeah, take that.
French legend. Make up your mind.
Come on. I know he's earned that position to do what he wants, but
I think him and Sebastian Loeb still doing the Monte Carlo Rally at 2058. I do take your point. But he's made it into 31 in this list. Well, that's it for the second part of our rundown, the top 50 drivers of 2024. We'll be back soon with our next countdown from 30 to 21. You can catch the previous episode if you missed it on our channel, and there's a link in the description below. Thanks for joining us.